we are reaching towards the end of the first section of Mundaka Upanishad, and we have reached the student who has lived a Vedic lifestyle, and the Vedic lifestyle that he has lived is an understanding that dharma moksha takes importance over artha kama. But the life starts out with a beggary of artha kama pradhan lifestyle. One is interested in the acquisition of wealth and in the enjoyments of the world. And if artha kama pradhan life is there, then the Shastra says that that is okay. Use the Vedas to fulfill your artha kama, and use these Vedas to fulfill the desired objects that you desire, and also the pleasures that you seek, but seek the pleasures according to the path enjoined by the Vedas. Having walked this path of artha kama pradhan jivan as prescribed by the Vedas, naturally, because the person lives a proper life of acting upon the world in proper parameters defined by Vedas, naturally some amount of chitta shuddhi comes, and the person eventually goes towards dharma and moksha. So the four purusharthas which are prescribed for the Vedic lifestyle, now he or she makes a turn towards dharma and moksha. And the turn towards dharma and moksha cannot be done without pariksha. And that is the pariksha lokan karmachitan brahmanaha, that all these lokas which are born out of karma, I have done karma for the lifestyle of artha and kama. The desires make me acquire various things. I go to the various worlds, enjoy the joys born out of them. But these are all but ephemeral. They are all short-lived. Once the punya of the higher worlds are over, I have to come back again and start all over again. And that pariksha, when it is done, nirveda mayat, the person naturally comes down with a mental attitude of proper understanding that everything over here has only relative importance, nothing has this absolute presence. And this nirveda is having understanding, having a type of understanding that the lasting alone is worth going for, and that is moksha pradhana jivan. Moksha is the one which takes that person towards this inner clarity of understanding which is born out of vivek, and that gives this paripakva vairagya nirveda mayat na asti akruta krutena. The uncaused cannot be attained by any cause, kruta. And tad vijnanartham, to know that sa gurumeva vigache samitpani shotriyam brahmanishtham, with samitpani, that he has become dry to the world, he has become fuel itself. Earlier he looked for fuel to fuel his life, now he has become fuel. He doesn't want anything else, he is ready to burn himself. in the front of the teacher, but he wants to burn himself in front of the teacher, who is a proper teacher, and that is Brahmanishtam. The teacher, Shankaracharya ji says that Taponishtaha, Japanishtaha, Jnananishtaha. The teacher himself has walked through all this. The teacher himself, having understood the ephemeral nature of the world, went to their own guru, and the teacher learned from their own guru, and that is the Taponishtha, the tapascharya of acquiring knowledge properly. Knowledge doesn't arrive like that, even though if it is served on a golden platter. If tapas is not there, if the jiva is not roasted in the tapas, the arduous journey that Gurudev had made from Rishikesh to Uttarkashi, and then the teacher saying that where is the letter, go back and get me a letter. These are all tapascharyas, all testing us, are we really ready for moksha? Even if one desire is there, the person will run away from there. In these cold mountains which have absolutely no comfort, the only comfort that is available is the Jnana and Vairagya. Jnana of Brahman, Vairagya for the Maya Janita Vastu Vyakti Paristhiti. In all these things, only when that person is prepared, they will go towards that. Otherwise, the person will fall short and come back to the world of karmas. To such a student is now the injunction. The Shruti says that such a student is rare. We don't find very many of these. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschin yo vekti mam tattvataha. Bhagavan himself says that thousands make the effort, but out of these thousands, one rare person strives, because the senses are too alluring, because our desires take us back away from our goal into the world, and the tempting nature of the world of objects and the senses which are drawn to it is too much. And one rare person puts a fighting battle with their own senses and the thirst of the senses to enjoy sense objects. And that rare person, after great pariksha, just walks away on this path to acquire knowledge, that I don't want anything else except this knowledge. And when such a student is there in this world, the Shruti herself addresses that such a student should not be left alone in this world. That student should have a guru. And if such a student arrives in front of a qualified teacher, the teacher may enjoy the silence of Maunam and just sitting quietly and not doing anything and abiding in their own Turiya Avastha. But such a student, the Shruti says the teacher has to come back down and take that student to that Turiya Avastha that they are dwelling in. For if such a guru, having reached this place, doesn't guide another one who is ready, then that is not befitting. The purpose of such one rare human being on this planet is to be the lighthouse for the one who has sought out this light of awareness. So, Shastra over here gives an injunction to such a guru. Tasmai savidvan upasannaya samyak
तस्मै सविद्वान् उपसन्नाय सम्यक्
प्रशान्तचित्ताय शमन्विताय
प्रशान्तचित्ताय समन्विताय
येनाक्षरं पुरुषं वेद सत्यम्
येनाक्षरं पुरुषं वेद सत्यम्
प्रोवाच तां तत्त्वतो ब्रह्मविद्याम्
प्रोवाच तां तत्त्वतो ब्रह्मविद्याम्
तस्मै to that student, tasmai, to that student who is a prepared student, the one who has completely awakened themselves to the realities of this world, who has done the pariksha, so that tasmai is that entire mantra in front of it, that student, not just any student, but the student who has prepared themselves, the one who has done this inquiry, this saha vidwan tasmai samyak upasannaya, that student who has approached such a teacher, and that teacher is not an ordinary teacher. The student is also not an ordinary student. The student has approached the teacher samyak upasannaya, very well, having great reverence for Brahma Vidya, and having understood that my teacher has what I am looking for, and having the reverence for the teacher, and having understood what the teacher has gone to acquire it, and having that respect and reverence for how the teacher has acquired it, that student follows the same path, upasannaya, having approached with due humility, with the seva bhav, pariprashnena sevaya, upadekshanti te jnanam, jnaninas tattvadarshinaha, that person who approaches the teacher properly, with great reverence, with great understanding, with humility, ready to serve. And ready to serve means ready to listen to all instructions released by the teacher. If the teacher says something and the student has discomfort in accepting the words of the teacher, the student mentally makes up a firm decision that my mind doesn't like it, but the words of my teacher are satyam, and forces that mind through the discipline of what the teacher asks the student to go through. All this is part of this upasannaya. The approach is proper. It is not a haughty approach that teach me. It is with due humility for the teacher, for the shastra, for the procedure in which the aparoksha vidya is made paroksha, and makes sure that it is understood as aparoksha and not paroksha. That whole process, having great understanding of that, is this upasannaya. That teacher is abiding in this aparoksha jnana, meaning it is not just information. The information has become part of their living. They have abidance in it. That is the aparoksha jnana. But the teacher cannot deliver the Brahma anubhuti. So the teacher has to take the non-dual experience and turn it into a dualistic explanation of the Advaita Anubhuti. in words he has to describe it, and that description is in the world of duality, paroksha, and the student has to hear the words in the dual medium but understand it as aparoksha. All that is part of that proper understanding, and having understood that it is a great journey that lies in front of me, but the journey will only reach its climax, it will only reach its success when I submit to all disciplines, and that is upasannaya samyak. Prashanta chittaya, of course the student has done karmakand. The student has gone through the entire artha kama pradhan jivan and has become completely silent on the inside, does not seek anything else, and that prashanta chitta is the chitta shuddhi, the purity of the inner equipment of the mind and the intellect having reached the inner silence. There is no thought modification which modifies the mind, which makes it run after various things. No, the mind has become quiet. There is a great beauty of the mind which has become quiet on the inside. That quiet mind is not the goal. It is still an empty mind. A quiet mind is a quiet mind. A quiet mind does not have jnana. Effort has been made to make the unruly mind quiet, and that is the part of what the Vedic lifestyle delivers. Prashanta chittaya, shamanvitaya, shama, dama, uparati, titiksha, shraddha, samadhan, all these things are slowly acquired through the ritualistic portion of Vedas. Lots and lots of sense control, mind control, faith in what I am doing, because I don't see the result immediately. In due time I see the result. Karma is done, but karma is done with faith, that shraddha, and that shraddha now becomes firm in the agam praman, that no, what is talked about is satyam. But now I seek something that which started out with etat satyam. Yes, it is true, because now it is his experience. The karma is bearing fruits, and the sakshat fruit is my mind has become quiet. My mind has become placid. There is an inner joy, the prashanta chitta. There is a spuranam of inner tranquility, and that is the sakshat anubhuti, and that strengthens faith like anything. That faith now turns into bhakti, and that faith which has now turned into devotion for agam praman, gira praman, ved praman, that what Vedas are declaring is true, and now the student is overcome with great amount of faith, and only the shraddha turned into bhakti can keep all the senses under perfect control. Nothing is required, because now the internal priorities are all figured out. So Shama and Dama creates all types of inner quietude, and the greatest quietude is Shraddha. And that Shraddha which creates Bhakti, now the Shraddha and Bhakti creates a greater Shama and Dama, and in this way complete Prashanta Chitta is reached. And to such a student, Yena Aksharam Purusham Veda Satyam. Over here, Provachatam Tam, to that student, Brahma Vidyam, this knowledge of Brahman, Tam Brahma Vidyam Tattvataha, as it is, the way it is in its entirety, the way the teacher knows it exactly. But sometimes the teacher understands that the way the teacher has, the way that he has acquired is through this. But the student has a unique mind, and this is the path that the student may prefer. So the teacher curtails Brahma Vidya so that the sadhana will culminate into it. It is that tattvataha, that in essence he will deliver, but he will also deliver a proper way in which the Brahma Vidya will become palatable for that student because of the uniqueness of the antakarana of the student. Tattvataha Brahma Vidyam Provacha Prakrushta Uvacha Prakarshena Uvacha. Very well, with detail, he will see, he will deliver, as well as in its entirety, that Praupasarga, both ways he will speak. He will speak in detail about his own inner experience, his own inner path, as well as what the Vedas have also declared to be the path through which one reaches that. And that is why the teacher has to be Shastrajna. The teacher has to be Panditaha, not for his sake, but because of the sake of who arrives, because the Brahma Vidya has to be customized for each antakarana. And that teacher speaks to that student, Provacha, and Yena Aksharam, by which this Akshara Brahma Vidya, Purusham, this absolute will, Veda Satyam, this student will come to know the Akshara Purusha in its entirety. And this is the injunction of Shruti to such a guru who has reached the higher state in their meditation, that may you lead a qualified student on this path along with you, so that there can be another person rescued in this world and who has gained the padvi of abidance in Turiya. And this is the end of the first Mundaka. The first Mundaka started out by asking a question, that you please teach me Brahma Vidya. The teacher said that yes, I will teach, but there are two Vidyas. There is a higher Vidya and then there is a lower Vidya. He explained that everything else is lower except this Akshara Brahma. And that Akshara Brahma, Yattad Dreshama Grahyama Gotrama Varnam, all that he said that is the Brahma Vidya. Then he said all else is lower, and then he leaped into the second section, the first Mundaka, second part, and the whole Vedic lifestyle. He gave a bird's eye view that all these mantras tadetat satyam, they are all true. You have to walk this path of Vedas. It is not easy, it is difficult, because Uchitakal is there, proper ways of acquiring Indhanam, all the types of ahuti, proper time, proper place, kindle fire, all those you do, and you will see a proper fruit. And if it is done properly, you will be led through the Surya Marg to the higher worlds, and you will be given a chance to enjoy, because if a karma is done, the karma is going to have its phala. You can have a sakshat phala in this world, you can have a punya of going to the higher world, but then there is a secondary punya of doing karma properly, and the secondary karma, punya of doing karma properly is the chitta shuddhi, and chitta shuddhi will eventually take you to pariksha of your life. You will examine, the examination will lead you to vairagya, which is born out of vivek, and not a haste vairagya to run away from this world, and that should culminate into a teacher in your life. Vairagya has to deliver a teacher who can deliver Brahma Vidya. Brahma Vidya, Shankaracharya ji said that Shastrajñopi Panditopi Brahma Anveshanam Swatantrayena na Kuriyat. By one's own self, one should not study that teacher. And that teacher also, like a great Mahatma Taponji Maharaj, quietly sitting in Uttarkashi, Himavat Vibhuti, but he has to be brought out of his soaring heights of Turiya for one Chinmayananda. Why? Because such a student has arrived. You cannot reject that. And year and a half he took a little detour every day in the Brahma Muhurtam time. Instead of abiding in this Brahma Vidya, he allowed himself to speak on Brahma Vidya, and that became a cause for one man who was transformed. And that one man who was transformed continues to transform so many others. This is the injunction of the Shastra, that when a prepared student is there, they will become the cause of paritranaya sadhuna. So, second section. Tadetat satyam yatha sudiptat pavakat vispulingaha
Yatha sudiptat pavakat vispulingaha
sahasrashah prabhavante sarupaha
Sahasrasha prabhavante sarupaha
tathaksharat vividha somya bhavaha
Tataksharat vividha somya bhavaha
prajayante tatra chaiva piyanti
Prajayante tatra chaiva piyanti
Tat etat satyam. The Karmakand started out by saying that all these mantras of the Vedas are true. Brahma Vidya starts out with the same way, that all these revelations of these great Mahatmas, these Upanishadic pointers to that higher self, they are all Satyam. But this Satyam overrides the previous Satyam now. So we have to understand that what is Satyam for one person, it differs for the other person. One, when a Mahatma realizes and the Mahatma says this Brahma Vidya alone is all this you are doing is just tuchha, that person has not quite understood. We cannot tell a kindergartner that, oh, you don't need to learn this ABCD, you just come and learn this astrophysics because I am a physics professor and I will give you a quick dose of that. The 5-year-old has to go through kindergarten, has to go through elementary, primary, higher secondary, all this is required. So this Etat Satyam, it has a lot of implications. When we reach this and when one does the higher sadhana of Shravan, Mananan and Nididhyasan and we see somebody doing karma kand, we should not laugh at them. When somebody does any type of karma upasana, that karma and upasana is very, very, very important because that prashanta chittaya shamanvitaya can only be attained through that proper following of this Brahma Vidya. And because it was Satyam, it gave prashanta chitta shamanvita. Only when it can deliver a student who is ready can this section become Satyam. Otherwise this section will ever remain hidden. This section can only be entered provided the previous one has been done properly. So karma is done. So much action, and not just action done properly. We saw proper time, proper ingredient, and making sure that the fire is properly. All this attentiveness is the observation of where am I standing in this world. It translates into the observation of my place in time and what am I doing, where am I headed. All this becomes very, very, very important. Not just the person is moving through the whole world like a zombie. It is not a dead person, it is an alive person. But the karma becomes the cause of that aliveness. Even though we are all basking in consciousness, hardly less than a fraction of a percent of us are ever yoked to consciousness. Most of us are dead to consciousness. That is why Bhagavan Krishna also says, for a jnani which is day, for a person who is living in this world, it is a night time. And what is day for the person living in the samsara, for that jnani, it is a night. They are in two different worlds, living in the same place, because one is exposed to consciousness and the other one is exposed to jada prakriti. So karma is the one that allows that person to yoke with the essence of the principle of life. And because of that, it is so important that karma will translate into upasana. I sit over there, I keep the mind steady, and the whole idea is delivering a flow of chitta. That flow of chitta to that deity of mind. That is invoking my union with awareness. And when such a person is ready, now that chitta which can retain its presence. Now over here the Shruti continues further and says, for such a person who is ever exposed to the principle of life, who is not dull, but who is alive while living. All of us are alive, but we are dead to life principle. But here is this student who is ever yoked with it, etat satyam. That person, that student, yatha, now the teacher explains Brahma Vidya. This is the starting of the Brahma Vidya. But he uses the example of Karma Kand to make a transition into Brahma Vidya, because the student has just finished all the Yajna Yaga, the karma, rituals, all those things. He is very well exposed to the Homa Kunda and the fire kindled in it. That teacher, knowing that the student has walked this path and arrived in front of me by doing all these Yajna Yagas, uses the same example to leap into Brahman now. That this example is used as an example, as an intermediary step going from karma to jnana. So here is an intermediary step where we see that the religion is slowly fading into this pure spiritual, and there is a dawn of spiritual awareness. And now the whole journey is going to change. This journey is not the same as the journey that he has walked through up to now. And that etat satyam yatha sudiptat pavakat vispulingaha sahasrashah sarupa prabhavante. Just like in a well-kindled fire, sudiptat, very well-kindled fire, fire is burning, pavakat, and the flames are rising, and these flames which are rising, they are burning so much, the fuel is so much, and the Agni is an inferno that it takes some amount of ash along with it, but it throws that ash up into the sky. But even though it is ash, the fire gives that little piece of ash, that burning indhanam, which is actually reduced, but the heat of it gives the heat and light, and as it is rising, fire is released from the Homa Kunda, and it is not just in the Homa Kunda, but the fire makes its way out of the Kunda and it goes into various places, and these little sparks, it may be tiny little thing, but we saw it was capable of burning the plastic around and everything. That is exactly what is said. These Vispulinga which rise, Sahasrashah, they are in greater quantity than what is actually in the Homa Kunda. Prabhavante Sarupa, they are of the same nature of the fire. If that fire is 1600 degrees centigrade, these little Spulinga, if we take, it may be a tiny thing, it lands on that skin, it is the 1600 degrees centigrade which has landed, and immediately it will make you scream. It is Sarupa, it is of the same nature of the fire. Tatha, in the same way, just like thousands of sparks which rise from the Homa Kunda, are of the same nature as the Agni. In the same way, Aksharat, from this Akshar Brahman, from this absolute Brahman, Tatha Aksharat Vividaha, so many other in various forms, in various ways, He Somya Bhavaha Prabhavante. Bhavaha Jivaha. All the Jivas come out of the Akshar Brahman, just like that same fire gives birth to these little sparks. These sparks are of the same nature of the fire. In the same way, from this Akshar Brahman, all which has come out is of the same nature as the Akshar Brahman, the same nature as that. Somya Bhavaha Jivaha Prajayante, and all these, they Prajayante, they come into manifestation, they are born. Tatra cha eva abhiyanti. In this way, they all come out, and then at the end it will merge back into that same Akshar Brahman, just like these sparks of fire rise from the Homakunda, and these sparks which go out when the Indhanam is over, they are of the same nature as the fire, but then eventually they merge back into the earth, just like when the Indhanam is completely over, the entire ash merges into the earth. In the same way, these Pullingas which have come out merge back into the fire, which will eventually merge back into the earth. In the same way, from the Akshar Brahman arises all these Jivas. People say, where do all the Jivas come from? From the same Paramatma, the Akshar Brahman. Everything has its origin from there. Prajayante, and in varied form they come out, and Tatraiva, in that Brahman alone, Api Chayanti, they merge back into that same Brahman. That is over here, the Upanishadic Rishi. Over here we see that the teacher Angirasa, who is teaching to Shaunak Havai Mahashala, he was a great Karmakandi who had Yajnashala and all those things. So the same example of what he is exposed to in Yajnashala is used over here. That he is in a sense saying that Akshar Brahman is the cause and all the Jivas are the effect, and at the end, when the effect perishes, where does the effect perish? The effect merges back into the cause. It is that cause alone gives birth to all effects, and from all effect, you remove the cause, nothing remains. The cause itself is the effect. In a different form, the cause alone becomes the effect in a different form. And for every effect, there is a cause. If the little Spulinga is there, there has to be a cause. A fire is the cause. So if the effect of the Jiva is there, there has to be a cause, because without a cause, no effect can exist. And if you take the effect and you remove the cause from it, nothing remains, because it is the cause alone which is the effect in a different form. That is all. So the entire 3 laws of causation are embedded in this mantra. The mantra starts off by saying Brahman Tadetat Satyam. What is the Etat Satyam? Brahman is the cause. Tadetat Satyam. What is Satyam? Brahman alone remains. Tadetat Satyam. Where are all the jivas coming from? From Brahman. Where else? If they come from Brahman, Tadetat Satyam. The jiva is none other than Brahman itself. So, all this, now the Satyam over here is the Paramarthika Satyavastu. That is the connection over here, that the Absolute is the truth. That Absolute cause alone is, there is nothing other than this Absolute cause, and that is the truth. And now that truth, that Brahman, is going to be the subject matter of description. Divyo hyamurtah purushah.
Divyo hyamurtah purushah.
Sabahyabhyantaro hyajah.
Sabahyabhyantaro hyajah.
Aprano hyamana shubraha.
Aprano hyamana shubraha.
Yaksharat paratah paraha.
Yaksharat paratah paraha.
These are all mantras of not just Shravanam, not just Mananam. These are Nididhyasan mantras now. All of a sudden the teacher is just making a leap into Akshara Brahman. That first it has to be heard of, then it has to be thought about, and then this thought alone should remain. But it can only remain if the chitta is prashanta chittaya, shamanvidaya. The senses do not persecute that person. When these sense objects do not persecute such a person, when the inner tranquility is reached out of Swata Siddhi, it is born out of one's own self-will. They have worked for it. Not that the prarabdha has come and delivered it. Prarabdha creates various situations on the outside, but it is I who choose to work with the prarabdha accordingly. And this student has created that. And for such a student who is prepared now, direct flight, Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasan, Divya, this Etat Satyam. What is this Etat Satyam? It is first adjective to describe this Brahman. It is Divya. It is effulgent. Dyotana Deva. Devatas are the ones which shed light. But they have to have the light to begin with to shed any light. The Aditya Bhagavan presides over Chakshusha Devata Aditya. Tattvabodh, all these things come. That the deity presiding over the eyes is Aditya Bhagavan. Shrotra Devata, Dik Devata, the deity presiding over our ears is the Dik Devata. Ashwini Kumaras preside over our own sense of smell, grana. Every single sense perception that we have, it is presided over by a Devata. Devata is that which brings about a understanding of an experience. First, the experience has to be created. And who creates the experience? The Devata. But then there is a mind which positively recognizes this experience. The ear helps facilitate the understanding of the sound that is provided by Dig Devata. Dig Devata comes and presides over the entire hearing faculty and converts the sound into information which can be passed through the auditory canal. So that Devata takes the sound, converts the sound into information. And that is the job of a Devata. Then it is the job of the mind to take that information and further make sense out of it. For me, what does that information mean? Sometimes that information I look at it doesn't apply to me and I leave it. Dig Devata has done the job of providing the information, but the mind has rejected it, saying that not for me. Sometimes the mind says, yes, this is relevant, I'm going to keep this. I'm going to revisit it. I'm going to take time to understand it because it has not made sense to me. But I know it is important. So who does all this? It is the faculty of knowing. The faculty of knowing in Dig Devata converts a sound energy into information. The faculty of knowing in mind converts that information into relevance for me, for the jiva. And that is passed to the buddhi. Buddhi with its own vivek shakti will decide whether it is really going to utilize it or not, because the mind may have picked it up out of its own likes and dislikes, but the buddhi, being closer to this Atma, is more refined. And that buddhi which is closer to Atma, what is that Atma? That Atma is self-effulgent. Buddhi got its awareness and the knowing ability from Atma. But who did Atma get that from? Atma did not get it from another Atma. Because if Atma got it from another Atma, then that other Atma would have gotten it from the third Atma. Then the third had to be getting it from the fourth, and that would be anavastha dosha. According to Tarka Shastra, it doesn't make sense. Then the first Atma would be limited by the second would be limited by the third would be limited by the fourth, and there would not be, it would be divergence, it will not converge into the principle of knowing. So Atma is self-effulgent, it does not borrow the knowing principle from someone else. It is the highest. It is Divya, self-effulgent. Please don't think it is like a light which will shed light. It is a knowing principle over here. The self-effulgent is knowing. So that is self-resplendent is what Gurudev uses. This Divya, he amurtaha, has no form, formless. The knowing principle has no form. It is a formless form. What is this formless form? Because we think of form as existence. So, the second form that I said, formless form, it is. Because we think if something is formless, it is not. Because the horns on my head are also formless. Because they are not there, that's why they are formless. I know I am not a longhorn. But Atma, it is formless, but it is. It is not like the horns on my head. It is not non-existent, it is existent. But that existent cannot be transacted like how I am looking for a transaction. And that is why he amurtaha. It is formless. It is a journey from a form to formless. And this mind and buddhi, if it is premature, it can come to a wrong conclusion that it is not, which is what Bauddha darshan has done, that shunya. It is not a shunyavadi. So, it is a completely different darshan. It is formless, but it is. Because who is saying it is formless? The one who is saying it is formless is. Otherwise, how can he speak? Divya, it is self-effulgent, self-resplendent. And that self-resplendent alone says, I am, but I have no form. So, this is the difference between the Bauddha darshan and this is the astikya. This is a theistic theism. And over there, atheistic theism. Nothing is formless. Completely different. They arrived, यहाँ तक पहुँच गए, लेकिन क्या हो गया? कुछ कमी हो गई. Something fell short. Because you imagine to reach over here is not a joke. The quieting of the mind, living a life properly, arriving all the way to the pinnacle of realization, and then coming, shunya, kuch hai nahi. Hare Bhagwan. You have to admire the effort of Buddha to reach over there. Sitting in the roof of the world, Tibet, in harsh conditions, with the prayer wheels and all those things, क्या साधना करते हैं? So we cannot look down, we have to do darshan, we have to do namaskar to such a person, but atheistic theism. Over here, this is theistic. There is an acceptance that it is. समय हो गया है. सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति. Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Something has come up, so tomorrow I won't